Hi, today is April 21st, 2023, and here are my poems for the day. The first one is poem number 659 for the year, That Time I Missed the Boat. The last poem yesterday, number 658, reminded me of that time I literally missed a boat. I was booked for what sounded like it would be a very special event. I was supposed to be at the pier at like 7 p.m. and the boat was leaving at 7:30, and the boat was going to have a bunch of different performances on it, and I was going to be the featured poet. But I was concerned that there wouldn't be any vegan food for me to eat on the boat, so I arranged to have dinner with a friend at a place called Zen Palate, which was on like 9th Avenue and maybe 44th Street. And the pier was on 42nd and the river, so I figured it wasn't far and we'd be fine. But the check took forever to come and I didn't have enough cash to just leave on the table, so we didn't leave until around 7:10 or maybe later. But I wasn't worried because I thought we weren't far and I figured they would hold the boat for me if worse came to worse. But we were far, and we were so far. It was such a long walk, and I didn't see any cabs, and the boat didn't wait. We got there at 7:35, and it was gone. I was stupid. Nowadays, I believe very strongly in if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. But back then, I was kind of dumb. I never got another chance to perform on that or any other boat, so damn, I really wish I hadn't missed that boat. Poem number 660, Uncle Wiggily. At Never Ending Books in New Haven on Tuesday, I pulled a few books off the shelf and took pictures of them. One of them was Uncle Wiggily's storybook. I had to take a picture of that, and I wish the picture had come out better. I had that book when I was a kid, but that's not why it moved me. It was because Bill Berger, the WFMU DJ who died in 2017, had a band called Uncle Wiggily. Uncle Wiggily and King Missile and a lot of great acts were on a Ruddles tribute album. Uncle Wiggily had one of the best songs on that album, It's Looking Good. I loved the guitar sound on it and the singing. King Missile had one of the worst songs on that album, Double Back Alley. I mean, the song is great, but our version just wasn't what it ought to have been. Anyway, I loved Uncle Wiggily and Bill Berger. He was one of the first DJs to play us, and I think he may have been the first DJ to have us on his show. An outstanding human being who loved music, especially lo-fi, which the first Missile release kind of qualified as. So seeing that book in New Haven brought me back to Bill Berger and WFMU and Uncle Wiggily, of course. I didn't see him that often, but I am very sad Bill Berger is gone. Poem number 661, Same Difference. At the Tibetan Kitchen in New Haven, I planned to order the vegetarian pling, which the online menu said was tofu, potatoes, dried mushrooms, sweet potato noodle, and spinach stew served with white rice. But when I got there, they didn't have vegetarian pling. They had vegetarian thing. The thing looked like the pling and may have been the exact same thing, and whether it was pling or fing, it was quite good. It made my bells ring. Okay, maybe I'm overstating, but I would have it again if I lived in New Haven and had already tried a few of the other things at Tibetan Kitchen. Poem number 662, Worst Record. At the Tibetan Kitchen in New Haven on Tuesday, I told Brian about that time someone from Atlantic Records had me meet with the Dust Brothers. It was 1993, and the Dust Brothers hadn't had a hit since they made the greatest record of all time in 1989. Later, they would make Odelay and other albums with Beck, but in 1993, they must have been in a relatively weak position because they agreed to take a meeting with me. I told Brian that the label was basically trying to Natalie Merchant me, but I guess I didn't feel like enough of a Natalie Merchant at the time because it didn't work. The Dust Brothers gave me a tape of some of their shit for me to put words with, and their new shit was amazing. But I decided to stick with my 10,000 Maniacs, aka King Missile, and we went on to make what I consider to be the worst album I ever made. However, while I used to blame the producer and the band for the way that record came out, the blame truly rests with me. There just wasn't enough good shit on that album, and it was my fault. I hadn't written much decent shit between the previous album and that one. I said to Brian, maybe the Dust Brothers would have told me, your shit is weak, go write more shit and then come come back and we'll make a good album. But it's more likely that if I had made that album with the Dust Brothers, I would have had the distinction of having made the worst record the Dust Brothers had ever produced. I used to think that deciding not to work with the Dust Brothers was the worst decision I had ever made, but now I think I should have gone and written more shit before we made that King Missile album that was so weak Atlantic dropped us almost as soon as it came out. The last poem of the day is poem number 663, Laszlo Toth. One of the readers who went on before me in New Haven on Tuesday made a reference to writing silly letters to corporations. When I went on, one of the first things I did was point to him and ask him if he knew about Laszlo Toth, and he said that he had. Laszlo Toth was the pen name of Don Novello. He wrote a lot of very silly letters to politicians and corporations, and many he wrote back. He sent several suggestions to Gerald Ford, who had a campaign called Whip Inflation Now, and before that he wrote letters to Nixon, pleading with him not to resign. I had to go ahead this morning and order a copy of the Laszlo letters and its first sequel from Ape Books. While I was doing that, I learned that Novello named himself after a Hungarian geologist who attacked Michelangelo's Pietà with a hammer. I also learned that one of my favorite comic book artists made a comic about that incident. I am too pressed for time just now to try to locate a copy of Laszlo's Hammer by Steve Ditko and writer Robin Snyder. I'm not even sure I want to own it. I just want to see it. I'm not even sure if I still don't have my original copy of the Laszlo letters, but I don't have it right here handy, and it was only $5, and I think the kid might like it. A lot of these poems ended abruptly today, but yeah, I am kind of in a rush, got to get to something, but I appreciate you, regardless of whether you appreciate me. I appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate you. I do.